Welcome to Shaping Stories, a glass artist podcast. Thank you for being here. Let's light up.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Katie Zeilman. I currently live in Western North Carolina, and I've been down here for about a decade now. So,
And where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of a really small farm village in rural Ohio, and spent a lot of my time in those kind of like rural spaces. So it kind of makes sense for me to have landed here for sure.
So, can you skip the glass part of your life for a minute? You want to talk about what you enjoy outside of glass?
Yeah, totally. So my partner and I, we now have 5 pets, which is a big chunk of our time. But outside of that, I mean, I've been working in native silk moth conservation for like the last 7 or 8 years, which is kind of like a passion project. I'm actually in the early stages of hopefully getting a nonprofit organization together for our, Appalachian community down here. I've also been on the board for my local Pride Coalition. Accidentally started a group of local flame workers and Boro artists out here in the mountains, so everybody can get together. Yeah, and just kind of I found again by accident that I actually really love community organizing. Even though that's not exactly what my like hermit brain wants to do. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's where a lot of my free time goes these days.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like my partner is always on the verge of like, I think we have enough things on our plate, and then I find something else and I rope that in. So
Sneak it in. How did you begin glass? Where does your glass journey start?
yeah. So I'll try to do like a medium version of it. I went to school in Columbus, Ohio, at the Columbus College of Art and Design. I started in photography and illustration. That was kind of the only access to making work that I had previously. And I was kind of a mess. I was just like barely 18, had never really spent time in a city before, and was just falling into some of the pitfalls that late teens, early 20-year-olds may. And I had a freshman professor who was not really having my shenanigans, I would say. And I asked her over and over, I was like, can I please come down and see the glass studio? Because she was an adjunct professor at the time. And she was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're a disaster. You should honestly consider dropping out. Like, this does not seem like it's working. And it kind of ticked me off just enough. So I like bypassed that and then just signed up for her class. And then out of spite, I walked into the shop, and as overwhelming and intimidating as it was, like from that point forward, it was kind of game over. And I tell that story now because she and I are now very close, and I call her my glass mom, and we catch up all the time. So.
So, what did you end up majoring in?
So technically, at the time, my school did not have a craft program. They've since dissolved the entire glass program altogether, but they had no space for craftspeople. So I have a bachelor's in fine arts with a concentration in glass blowing, which now I don't even know if that's de facto or whatever because the program isn't there. But yeah.
And what was your goal to do with that? Did you know?
Yeah, I was pretty adamant early on that I wanted to be a cup maker. I wanted to make goblets. I wanted to make everything thin and tight and like all of that. Um, as many fall into that trap, I'd say. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to really focus on the form and the function and, how to produce the same object well over time, that those kinds of issues. I was not super interested in the fine art aspect at all, which kind of came in later, I guess.
And what year was that?
I started school in 2012. So that's really where it all kicked off. I tried to keep a double major for a while, but it wasn't worth it, and I couldn't get enough time in the hot shop. So that was pretty much my jumping off point.
And your professor in the hot shop, did they encourage your interest or did they have their own thing too?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so my professor at the time, her name is Krista Harmon. She's incredible. She was very encouraging in her own way, I would say. We had kind of this band of misfits in our program, and there wasn't a ton of help or encouragement from, the rest of the school administration and stuff. And it kind of seemed at times that we were all doing it out of spite a little bit, like, no, we're still here, you can't get rid of us, kind of a thing. And once we kind of had that momentum, like, yeah, I mean, she's one of the most encouraging people I know, and I'm so grateful for that. Like, we really kind of built our own little family down there we called it the canyon. It was like this cement hole under the parking lot where they threw a furnace and some handmade equipment. So,
And did you learn anything about equipment running there or were you just blowing glass?
oh yeah. Well, I think that was part of the deal. Like I was kind of, I wouldn't say resentful. I was resistant to the amount of focus on like concept and like kind of the more fine arts end of things. And I wanted to learn technique, and I wanted to learn from the ground up and all the tech information and equipment building and all of that. Thankfully, the lack of funding lent itself to learning how to make a lot of things by hand. So we often recycled leftover materials from the ceramics department to do our summer rebuild, and casting doors with our own premix of, refractory and stuff. At a certain point, I was also constructing my own miniature crucibles to do my own color mixing in a hole, like in a glory hole. Which was short-lived, but it was still really fun, and I learned a lot that way too.
So when you graduate, where did you go from there?
Yeah, so when I graduated, I think it was honestly the week before I graduated, I found out that I had gotten a job in Asheville, for a really awesome studio there called Lexington Glassworks. They're kind of like a high-end like destination shop, I think, in a lot of ways. And I had been given a scholarship or partial scholarship to go to Pinland that same like juncture of time. So I went up for a goblet making class and went down to visit Asheville, and it was just game over. And I moved down as quickly as possible. And I've left a few times to go do other stuff, but I always come back here. Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about how Asheville's changed since you've been there?
Yeah. Sure. Well, I will say now I live out in Yancey County, which is about an hour northeast. It's kind of in between Pinland and Asheville. I've also lived in Mitchell County, just this leg of the region I really love. But when I first moved to Asheville, um, I would say it still had kind of a smaller town community vibe to it. Really, over the last decade, the change in various markets, rental population, stuff like that, like it's all changed in massive ways. For a while, it was an upswing, I will say, and then obviously last September we all kind of took a really big hit. So I don't get down to Asheville as much anymore. But I mean, I love everybody there. I do love that city. And all of us still are bouncing back from Hurricane Helene. So, yeah, I mean, the amount of traffic that comes through and revenue that's made has taken a huge hit in our entire region. But it still has like the bones of Asheville, which is, arts and community and all of that. So.
And a lot of the work that you do now is on the torch, right? So when did you start that transition?
Yeah, my day job is still full-time soft glass production, which I can talk, I guess, more about in a little bit. But I started on the torch in 2020. Um, since I've been in North Carolina, I've pretty much I just threw myself into the like assistant pool. So for years, I really didn't get to make my own work. Like I just assisted anyone and everyone, and there were days where I would drive an hour just to go clean someone's studio, like that kind of thing. But in 2020, when the pandemic hit, most, if not all, of the glass studios closed their doors or didn't have orders and stuff like that. So I ended up borrowing a torch from a family that I was working for, the Buenos, Thor and Jennifer Bueno, who I love. And they let me borrow their little Red Max, and I set it up on my porch, and they gave me some like random color that someone had left behind, and I just started messing around. No idea what I was doing. And I had a friend who I knew through a gallery in Asheville called Level 42. Unfortunately, their physical location is no longer viable. But my friend Vaughn worked for those guys, and he was just so encouraging, and like he was the dude who got everybody hyped on everything all the time. So he was really like, no, you got this, like keep going for it. The stuff I was working on was bad. It was not well made at all. But through that, I mean, I found out he did the same for a lot of our friends. So he was trying to get people to make work that they wouldn't have otherwise, and or like weren't really comfortable with, or he was like really pushing people.
And so you're doing soft glass full-time day job, Borosilicate on the torch around that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a delicate balance. So my main day job is gaffing for a barware line called Terrain. And I had the privilege of working for the owner of that business for like 7 or 8 years before I kind of started gaffing. His name is Colin O'Reilly, and he started it in the Spruce Pine area. And the train line is really dependent on a specific type of glass that's manufactured in spruce pine called spruce pine batch. I'm biased for sure, but it's like the best ever, the best quality glass ever. So the train line was really dependent on that because of the clarity of like the raw material. And I don't know, just like the standards of that company and the technical knowledge that it took, even just to assist, was like, it wasn't just opening and closing a mold. So that really like gave me a strong skill set, and I love Colin and his family that really like kept me in this area. And he decided to go back to school for anesthesiology last year, not even quite a year ago, I think. So he sold it to the owner of the studio where I was already working part-time, and they hired me on as gaffer. So I'm still kind of in that first year transition space of trying to be Colin O'Reilly, which will never happen.
Full circle though with your interests in shapes and forms.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used to go round and round and round with one of the fine art professors in my school about like, no, form and function does matter, and it doesn't need all of these other things, and all I want to do is make good, clear cups. And it's really cool that like all these years later, I'm like, oh shit, I get to make really good, clear cups.
Yeah, yeah, that's so funny. I'm gonna be a cup maker. No, I really am.
Apparently.
And you want to talk a little bit about what your life is like there? So are you doing Monday through Friday during the daytime? Are you just making glass? Are you responsible for, charging the furnace, for training people? Do you have to talk to the public, or is it headphones on land?
Yeah, so some days are, different than others. We blow glass, I would say like 50% of the time. One of the things that I like about hot shop production is that it's kind of self-perpetuating. So at least in the style that we're making work, you bust it out for a few days in a row, and then I know at the end of the week I have multiple more days of cold working and fire polishing and all the finishing stuff. Um, our tech for the studio, which is Hearth Glass here in Burnsville, is the he's my assistant, but he's also the tech, and also I don't know, we're kind of this other big family where like the hierarchy isn't as like super structured. So like there are things where I mean everyone's knowledge base is coming from somewhere else. So he's an incredible assistant, but he also handles all of the technician end of our stuff. And then I switch out and I go do cold work with my headphones on for hours, which I love. Yeah.
Mm. And then you're hopping on the torch and doing that. And then you're also kind of like promoting that work on the internet. How
Yeah,
does that
trying my
feel?
best, I will say. Yeah, the torch stuff has been so interesting because it's so in contrast to what I do, like on the regular. And I think that's really important. Like I think for especially younger artists coming up, like it's really important to diversify the work that you make. Because some months, you know, you can sell all the cups in the world, and then some months you can't. So it's always good to have something that kind of balances it out, but I feel like it balances like my mentality at the same time. My hot shot brain is one very specific thing. And then on the torch, you know, it's something totally different. Like I on the torch, my work is very sculptural. I still try to keep like that really fussy attention to detail, but it's a different approach for sure. So it kind of like tempers my probably neuroses on both sides, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you promote your hot shop work online too, or are you just mostly promoting your like what you're doing for your borosilicate stuff right now?
Yeah, I kind of and like even promoting my Boro work still feels so goofy because like I only started doing that like 5 years ago. Um, but at the same time, like my hot shop work, it isn't it's not my design, it's not my company, kind you know, so I feel I like to share some like behind the scenes stuff. But it's weird because I don't feel like if I promoted it on my page, it would like reach the right audience necessarily.
Mhm.
And I definitely struggle to like, how do you showcase both of the things when they're so completely different from one another? But yeah, I mean, the Boro stuff on Instagram is so strange these days. Like I have my own website and like other stuff going, but that's where a lot of people interact and connect. And social media is just so weird these days. So I try to promote my work that direction, but you know, depending on the day and the algorithm, it's not always the case.
Yeah. When you have a new idea, do you have a notebook? Like, do you make lists or draw things out or write things out, or you just kind of wing it? Can you visualize things in your head?
Yeah, totally. I love drawing still. I love to draw. I have like a million sketchbooks, with like most of them are like graveyards of ideas at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, I compile a lot of like reference images, especially with, I call them like the critters that I make, my animal pieces. I try to look at as many references as possible and then draw them out into like simplified forms and planes and things. So it's like you're just communicating the idea of the thing. Like I don't want to get too hung up on anatomy or I'll be in there all day. So yeah.
Hmm. And do you ever feel stuck because you're doing so much glass all the time? Do you ever feel that you don't, do you ever lose your glass creativity or the joy that is sparked from that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and I think really before I started doing Boro, I was incredibly burnt out. I had been primarily assisting and doing tech work and charging and finishing for everybody else. Like I didn't really have access to my own rental time. I didn't have my own space. I think that infrastructure is like a really big barrier for a lot of young artists these days. And it kind of felt like just treading water for so long, like just barely staying afloat. Like that's how I paid my bills, but I had nothing to show for it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it definitely has lost its sparkle. in a lot of different ways over the years, and kind of like eye-opening in a lot of different ways. How, all I wanted to do was go work for someone who made these incredible cups, and then at the end of the day, it was like, you get there and it's just not what you anticipated that looking like or feeling like. So I've almost walked away from glass a lot of times, a lot of times. But yeah.
And how do you get out of that?
That is a good question. I think to some degree, like I was saying earlier, like I was just really like spiteful when I was like barely 18 and I wanted to get in that hot shop. I've had a lot of people tell me, not a lot of people, but I've had folks tell me over the years, like, oh, you're not cut out for this. Like, just knock it off and go get a day job, kind of a deal. And I reject that wholeheartedly. And yeah, like I feel like sometimes the the barriers or like the tension between things has kind of made me double down. Whereas it would be easier to walk away most of the time, but I'm really stubborn. So
Good thing.
yeah, yeah.
So we went through all of the questions that I typically ask. I don't know if you have anything else that you would want to talk about and share, or if you have words of wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of things that I was given some really great advice, like as a youngster, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
But I feel like there are a lot of different pitfalls nowadays that um, maybe weren't like in full effect when I was just getting into the field. But yeah, for younger artists, I would say um, do not be in competition with other artists. Just don't do it. And everyone around you is like a source of knowledge and information. Like there is no reason to be putting people up here on a pedestal or putting yourself up there on the pedestal. Like there's no purpose. You will not get far with that. And to me personally, if there's one thing that I think our industry needs is like people who are actively carving out safety for other people. There's a ton of abuse in the glass field, and I have encountered my fair share of it. And that's been another thing that really deterred me for a period of time for wanting to be involved. And now I'm like vehemently carving out every single way I can think to protect like the youngsters coming up behind me, and like what kind of things can we do to make safe, good people more accessible to people coming in. And yeah, so like seek out the individuals who care and make you feel welcome. um, no one should ever put you in harm's way. No one should ever make you feel less than. And all you can do is like put your best work ethic in and look out for the people around you and make it better for everyone who's coming next. That would be my advice.
Perfect. You did it.
Yay.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Thank you so much for listening to Shaping Stories. If you like our podcast, please make sure to follow on whatever platform you're listening on. We are always grateful for your reviews to help other artists find us. You can find us on Shaping Stories Pod on Facebook and Instagram. And please make sure to support this artist that we interviewed today. It's a lot of guts to come on here, and we appreciate them being vulnerable and sharing, and especially for their very valuable time.